Yeah,
Uh-oh.
mine lags sometimes too, so if I turn it off, that's why, because it'll freeze and then it gets hard to look at.
Mine's just like completely disconnected. I had to like restore a software update.
Mine's like built into my computer. Is yours?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got you.
All right.
And now Google is.
So we are streaming on YouTube right now.
Sweet.
Clear that. So I guess we will start whenever. Oh, is that him?
Zach? I can't see him.
Oh,
I
no.
can't say anyone.
I think it'll show him when he like. Yeah, but hello, Star Vibes. So, how's everyone doing?
Good.
Good.
Bored.
Same. I wonder if Ryan is going to join, because she was going to be the moderator.
If not, we also have one who moderates, not biased though.
Okay, cool. Oh. There he is.
Oh yeah, there's Zach.
Hello.
Hello.
All right, what's up?
Wait, where did Jordan go?
Can you hear me?
There he is.
There we go. Sorry, that was an accident.
All right. Hello,
Can y'all hear
everyone.
me?
Yeah, we can.
Are we waiting for Ryan?
I just sent it to her, but it says she was active 33 minutes ago. So
Yikes. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's start with that.
if she joins, it'll be fine. But if she doesn't, it's okay.
Okay.
All right. So how do we want to go about this? Do we want you want us to go first, or you guys to go first, or
It's up to you guys.
Jordan?
Maybe just-
What do you want to do?
Unless you guys want a moderator.
I don't care. I think we should first start off. We should get a consensus on what we're arguing about and our like belief on it.
Well, y'all can hear me, right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Because the term white privilege is just like ambiguous, you know.
True.
Wait, do we need a moderator? Because I can get one.
Okay, so
I have a person who's actually.
I believe
waiting.
we're arguing whether or not it exists.
Oh, she just saw it. She should be joining. But yeah, anyways.
Do y'all
sorry.
need a moderator? I can get one.
So
I got one. She should be joining in a minute.
we're arguing whether it exists and or like
Yo, I can't hear Bryce.
the relevance of it.
You can't
I'm
hear him?
assuming.
Yeah, like I can see his
Right.
mouth moving. I just can't hear him.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
And,
I can hear you.
I think it
Can you hear
exists,
Jordan?
and I think
Yeah, I
it
can hear.
is
Yeah,
significant.
It's
enough.
Can you hear me
Bryce.
now?
yeah, just not Bryce.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Huh, that's
Can you hear
weird.
me now?
I can leave and join back and see if that works.
Okay.
Okay. Well, there is Ryan. He's our moderator. Hello, Ryan.
All
Alright.
right.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Oh, Zach left.
What?
He's joining back. He
Yeah, 'cause he
left it.
couldn't hear us.
Yeah.
Okay, this is very weird. I'm so sorry. Technical difficulties. Have we gotten into a lot of stuff?
I'm having them too.
Okay, thank gosh. Because I feel super stupid because I never used this before.
Same.
So, Ryan, we're just going to let you pick which side goes first, so you can be conservative logic, or it can be one of us. Doesn't matter. You're kind of like the non-biased middle ground. Make sure people don't tear each other's heads off.
Yeah. And just to the conservative logic that I am completely non-biased.
Yep.
Like, I will let you talk and I'll let my fellow colleagues talk.
Got it. Yep.
I just want a clear communication that we both understand. Okay.
Mhm.
So, personally, I feel like the other conservative logic should do it first because
Should start off.
they submitted in to. Oh.
That makes sense. You can
Yeah.
just hold it if you want to. You don't have to set it up.
Okay.
Do you know if Zach is joining back?
Yeah, he's trying to join up.
Okay, cool. So when he joins back, we'll just let you guys start off the debate.
I don't
And
think I can hear conservative logic.
Hello?
I can hear him. He muted himself a minute ago, but I can hear him.
Is he talking?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, okay. I heard it.
Alrighty.
We're gonna have to put it in the description below. It doesn't get good until
Yeah, like a timestamp, like it starts
we'll
here.
do that.
If you just want to see pure stupidity and just see us like failing, get bad.
Like
Not
fumbling our
understanding
cameras
technology.
like a mom. Can you see me? Are you there?
Yeah.
I really want to understand what's going on with my computer.
I can see you and hear you fine.
Yeah, but I want it on my computer.
I was coming from my speaker.
Now, I'm not sure if my camera works, but now
Yeah, your
Google
camera's
won't work.
working.
My camera still won't work. That's great. But on
I'm
the
sorry if
bright
you hear
side,
some. Go ahead.
on the bright side, Google now won't work either. So there's that.
Sorry if you hear some background noise. My house is getting pressure washed.
It's all good.
Cool. I love pressure washers. They can cause a lot of destruction.
They can. In the hands of the wrong people. Thank you for sticking with us, Star Vibes. We're just trying to get the ball rolling.
It's all good.
So.
He's currently trying to join, I guess.
There's 2 comments.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I not comment back? Oh, that sucks.
You can. I think.
Hi.
I don't think I can. Hi, Star Vibes.
Hi, Star Vibes.
It does not show that he's trying to join. Oh, there are 2 people watching now.
I don't have an option to comment. That's unfortunate.
I do.
I think he's still having technical difficulties. I just texted him again.
And I think this uploads right to our channel as soon as it's done.
Oh, it's currently on our channel. Like right now, it's live streaming on our channel. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay,
so this is connected.
So do we just want to start without Zach right now?
I mean, yeah, sure.
Okay.
But I think can we just wait like a little bit because I know he wants to be part of this.
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah,
hear him.
definitely, sure.
No, I can't.
Or
I
we
can't hear
could,
him.
or we could.
Shut
kind
up,
of
Jordan.
No, I literally can't hear him.
He
I
says
thought you
it's
said no.
working
I
now.
can't wait.
No, I can't hear him.
He might be in the back room. I don't know what it's called, but he said he was able to join.
Yeah, it's not going through.
Okay.
He's
Let's
right.
see.
Ryan,
What?
can you hear him?
My eyes are very poppy today.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
I can.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
I can't hear conservative logic for some reason.
You can't?
I can.
Hello?
I can hear him.
I can hear him.
I can't hear him. Should I try and leave and come back again?
I mean, if you want to. All right. Ryan, you can just hold your phone because it keeps dropping.
Oh, okay. It's just how the light is.
Alright. But yeah, Zach will have to follow the link that you sent him
Yeah.
for him to be able to join.
There we go.
And... Hello.
Okay, I think I can
We're
hear
having
everyone
technical
now.
difficulty.
Do you have a little thing on the bottom where it says like mute, stop camera, mic, invite?
Yeah.
If you
It
tap
doesn't say
invite,
invite.
oh, there he is.
Oh, can you see him?
Yeah, I'm adding him.
All
There
right,
he is.
all
I
right.
don't see a video. There we go. Yeah,
Hello?
Hello? Yeah.
Hey.
we can hear you.
All right, sweet.
There we go.
All right.
All right.
So, Ryan, you
Bryce, can you go
over.
ahead and I still can't hear Bryce. Oh, that's gonna suck.
Can you hear me, Zach?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you
Anti-Trump
hear me?
podcast. Can you talk and so I can see if I can.
What? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I
You
can
can
hear you. I just can't hear Bryce. I guess yeah, it's unfortunate.
Well, damn.
I can try joining on my computer and see if that.
Yeah, I think it really this is meant for computers. So.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me turn my speaker off. Can you hear me better now? Can you hear me? Zach?
Well,
Nope.
Should we go on
Well-
Instagram Live
Uh,
and I can screen record it?
well, we could.
Oh, wait, yeah. What's the stream delay? Because technically he could just listen to the YouTube like as we're talking.
He could
Oh
do that.
yeah.
Oh yeah, you could do that.
Yeah,
Hold on.
hold up. I'm gonna see if my computer, if I join on my computer, will it be better.
Zach will debunk you. Thank you for that.
Oh.
Can only you see how many viewers there are, Bryce?
Yeah, there's 6.
But
No problem. It's a fact. Okay. Well, the debate technically hasn't
psychic.
started yet, so we'll see.
A psychic.
Yeah, I know. You can see into the future. Damn.
Can you tell me how I'll do on my
Debunk
calculus
everyone.
AP test?
He will debunk everyone, even himself. Well, if he debunks himself, then
Yeah.
That's not-
Wait,
What will I get on my AP calculus test?
yeah.
Please tell me.
do you guys still have AP tests?
My first one's on Tuesday.
Dang. We don't have them.
Yeah,
We
we
have
don't
like
have
final projects now. We don't have like a test itself.
Really?
Yeah.
69.
Did he
He's
say
in jail.
6 out of 5? Okay, that's legendary. It's out of 5, so thanks for that. I'll take it.
We don't even have them either.
I thought they were what? I thought they were a national thing.
Okay.
I hate my state. It's fine.
Okay. Zach, can you hear me? Is there any chance that you can hear me? Maybe. Probably.
All right, I'm joining on my computer and see if that's better.
Okay. Trayvon Martin was justified. Whoa!
I don't know how I feel about this man.
We can get into that later.
That
That's
could be
a little. That's a little iffy right there.
I don't know the
Hey,
specifics
Bryce,
of the
did you
case,
see the new-
so I don't know if I can argue it. But
Basically, they're saying that the killing of a young black youth is justified.
oh, wait a second. Oh no, this was the
Zach,
George Zimmerman
can you
one.
hear us?
Oh
Yeah.
How about Bryce?
no, this was
Can you
the
hear
George
Bryce?
Zimmerman case.
Wait, Bryce, talk?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
Sweet.
Let's go.
But
All
the
right.
cop that killed him, I believe, was Hispanic, so that doesn't really
Yeah.
tie in. But okay.
Okay, Ryan, you take over.
Who's the moderator?
Ryan.
Ryan is.
All right, hello, Ryan.
Hello.
I believe Ryan chose. Y'all two to go first.
All right, we're not going to get into the whole Trayvon Martin case because that's a different topic from right now. But anyway, Ryan, you go ahead. Start us off.
All right. Welcome to the white privilege debate on the anti-Trump Hype House account, and we have on our opposing side, on the other side of us, is from the Republican.
Teenage
What's your
Republicans.
username again?
Teenage
Teenager
Republicans.
Republican.
Zach isn't from it, but
And-
yeah. More like classical. Yeah, just go ahead.
You guys go ahead and state your first statement.
Us?
Yeah.
Okay. So I believe white privilege does not exist and systematic racism does not, and that's my stance.
I'm on the same page as him. I believe individuals can be racist. I don't think there's any widespread systematic racism on the other hand.
Well, technically, systematic racism and white privilege are two different things.
Yeah.
Systematic racism benefiting whites or disadvantaging blacks.
I mean,
I
I
mean,
think, and I would say like white privilege is more than a systematic like mass incarceration kind of thing. It's a hard thing to argue because it's like there's so many factors that go into it, like socioeconomics. And the thing is that you have to establish that it's because of race. So I do understand like the rebuttals, like no, he was armed or like, but I do believe that there are like disadvantages for like most like non-whites that are because of their skin color.
yeah,
Like, I believe like anything from like minor inconveniences for a woman of color like going into a makeup shop and only seeing white foundations to a cop like looking at your skin color and assuming, oh, they're more likely a violent person, so I have to approach them differently than if they were white. I believe that white privilege exists across multiple areas, like as I said, like from even something as like cosmetics to like actual systematic racism, which I do believe in.
well, yeah. So I would like to just so we can fundamentally agree on the definitions of privilege, which is a special right, advantage, or immunity granted or available only to a particular group of person. So I don't really want to stay on semantics for too long, but I just want to make sure we can both agree that that's the actual definition. Because I don't want to be arguing something where we both fundamentally agree on the actual definition of the word. Because then we can be conflating two different things.
Well, the thing for me, white privilege isn't like, it's not saying that like someone's life, like a white person's life, is made easier because they're white. To me, it's like they don't have the disadvantages associated with being a person of color.
So
Yeah,
what are those
privilege.
disadvantages? So what are those disadvantages you were talking about?
for example, I think that one of the first things that come to mind when you think of my skin color, brown, I'm a Hispanic, is cartels. You think of everyone's mind goes to Mexican for one. I never hear Hispanic immigrants. I hear Mexican immigrants, and when they think of Mexican immigrants, they think of cartels.
Who
They
does?
think of pushing drugs, drug mules. They think of this for some reason this idea that
Wait, who's thinking that?
are
That's subjective, not objective.
Yeah,
Society as a whole does not think that.
who's thinking?
well, yeah, but I'm saying it's all based on skin
Yeah, but
color.
who's
Of course,
telling you
not
that?
everyone thinks that, but it is an opinion that is that could hurt a lot of.
So what you're saying is you're basing stereotypes, which is on a social level, which the government has no role in. And the only thing that can change social structure is us.
White privilege isn't an all governmental thing.
Then what, it kind of is. If you're saying that whites are disadvantaged more than blacks are on a level, it has to be governmental, because society, you cannot change society. And you're talking about subjective opinions. You're not talking about society as a whole.
If we're talking about stereotypes, I mean, there's plenty of white stereotypes, there's plenty of black stereotypes, there's plenty of Asians. I mean, school shooters for white people, I know that's obviously it's not true, it's a stereotype. But my point is, there's stereotypes for all different races. To point out a stereotype and say it's a privilege to one group is that's just
But the thing is that those stereotypes towards white people, they're not what's the word I'm looking for? They're not oppressing. They're not damaging opportunities for you.
How are they? Explain that, please.
Because there are there was a study where black people and people of color had to whitewash their resumes and whitewash their
I hear
how they looked on paper.
Brandon,
should I take that one?
Brandon, I got it.
All right.
So what year was that study conducted?
2003. Or sorry.
Yeah, I believe it was
2003. Yeah, so 17 years ago, right? So yeah, a recent study, 2016, came out with data. It conducted the same study and found that there is no racial bias in the job application. So there's no need to whitewash your name. And so yeah, I mean that source is pretty outdated. So I wouldn't really be citing that when there's multiple studies refuting that study, because it's new data. And obviously, over 17 years, people are going to evolve and ideologies will develop. So I just don't think it's relevant.
And the study you're stating also compares the exact. They have this two exact same resumes, right? And statistically, white people will be more successful while working. And when you compare two, if they both go to college, you compare. That's a statistic. It's not racist using statistics, but when you compare two colleges, you know that the white person had to work harder because of affirmative action. Because affirmative action made that black person 2,100 times more likely to get into that college than the white person did.
What's the purpose of affirmative action?
Affirmative.
What's it for?
Me or Zach?
Brandon. Yeah. So let's kind of take this. I don't want to jump into a bunch of different stuff. Let's. I want to get to a point to where we can agree on conceding to a point and not conceding to a point, because then it's just going to be a bunch of shifting the goalpost, logical fallacies, and I don't want to do that. So
yeah, sure.
So let's just kind of take things a little slow. So back to the whole job thing and everything. Yeah. So what was wrong with the original? Not to mention. So the first thing for future point is that there's a new study that debunks everything in the old study. But what was wrong in the first study was that they used names that weren't majority people of color or white people. The new study used names that are over 50% or over 60% people of color have these names. So it's more inclined to hear these names. So the names were off, the last names were off. So the study was just, the methodology in the study was flawed in the first place. So yeah. So
could I get a title of the new one you're talking about?
Yeah.
Just so I can look at it.
Yep.
Can I say something?
Yeah, you got it.
So I agree from that new study that was conducted in 2017 that it's not as hard for a person of color to get a job than it was back then due to new guidelines and new.
It doesn't say as hard. It's there's literally no disparity.
Yeah, but it has been studied that people of color are more likely to get less of pay than someone who is white. And a study that was conducted by the National Alliance to End Homelessness found that poverty affects 9.9 of the white population, whereas it affects 27.4% of the African American population.
Yeah, so yeah, we can get into poverty real quick if you want to get to that. So yeah, me and Brandon have a whole doc on this. Brandon, do you have the thing pulled up? Because I'm not currently signed into my
Yeah.
Google Docs.
But basically, if you're gonna base white privilege on poverty, it wouldn't be white privilege. It would be Indian privilege. It would be Pakistani privilege. It would be Filipino privilege, because on average, they all earn more than whites do.
Yeah, let me just add on that real quick. Y'all consider like Africans to be black, right? I mean,
Well, I mean, people of color, yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
So yeah. So then, by your logic, Nigerians would have black privilege because they also have, on average, higher incomes than white people. If you're talking about poverty, they're one of the least groups that are in poverty. Nigerians have the average highest average median income. So by your logic, there would be black privilege and
Well,
white.
the thing about white privilege is not a biological, like, where you are from. It is a skin color thing, and you can't look at someone and go, "Oh, they're Nigerian," versus like, "Oh, like they're like any other part of like."
Yeah,
Like, a lot of
Nigerians
black
are-
people don't even know what part of Africa they're from because
That's not my point. You're strawmanning me. I said my point is I'm applying this logic to other black people and saying that
I don't see how your point's relevant if you're talking about the specific country you're from when white privilege isn't about the country.
Nigerians are black. Nigerians are black.
Yeah, but you can't tell if someone is Nigerian based off their skin color.
so
my
are
point.
you? I
That's
need
my
to
point.
clarify something. Are you talking about Nigerian Americans or Nigerians from Niger
Africa, yes, like literally like actual Nigerians from Africa
that are living there, like currently?
No, immigrants, like first generation immigrants from Nigeria who have moved here.
Okay.
First and second generation, they all have higher median incomes. My point is, you can't because you're looking at black people and you're looking at white people and saying white people have like better, their least amount. Black people are more in poverty, and I'm giving you a certain set of black people that are have higher median incomes and are the least group in poverty. So I'm applying your logic to another group of black people and saying, well, by your logic, you would have to go and say there's
A
black
smaller
people.
group.
Yeah, but
I
they're
get
still
that,
black.
but Nigerian Americans make up a very small population of African Americans.
I agree.
Yeah, so so is that
Yes.
statistic enough to push black people into the majority of, or like into the minority of impoverished people compared like demographically?
What? What'd you say?
Like does the Nigerian American statistic of like they're actually not like more impoverished, does that like counterbalance the fact that like demographically like black people are disproportionately poor?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you'd have to apply and say that there's Nigerian privilege or African privilege.
Yeah, but like that's a different issue than white privilege because you can't look.
I
at
know
someone-
it is. I'm applying your logic. So yes or no, is there Nigerian privilege by your poverty logic?
Nigerian, but
And
not
so-
African.
In
Well, that's what-
socioeconomic,
not-
I
Nigerian's African.
No, Nigerians are from Niger.
Yeah, that's in
Which is
Africa.
from Africa.
That's like saying you're not North America, even though you're from North America.
I mean, I guess, sure.
North America.
Yeah, but you can't take-
that's not.
Africa's
But you can't
continent.
take a statistic from a specific part of North America and apply it to the rest of it.
What do you mean?
Exactly. That's like saying people from like Kentucky are more
I'm
likely to
not
get a job. So
applying
that affects like
African
everyone in
I'm not
America. You can't
applying
just pick
African
out one specific piece from
I'm not
somewhere.
applying it to African Americans. I'm just asking a question. Is there Nigerian privilege by your poverty logic?
I mean, sure.
In socioeconomics, I get sure.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So if we can agree on that, then we can go ahead and move into the reasons.
Why they are in poverty.
Yeah, why black people, African Americans.
Why do you think they are in poverty? That's a question I have for you guys. Why do you think they are in
Because
poverty?
it's been proven that African Americans usually get less pay than white people. They usually
And
make
also, it's like
Can I get a link on that?
it's like a continuation from, of course, the slavery days, and when they made slavery illegal and they gave in the civil rights era segregation. Segregation, the whole premise of it was separate but equal, but obviously we all know it was not equal. Their education opportunities, their economic opportunities were not equal.
I mean, actually,
Okay.
Why?
So-
Wait, let me just say something. You can get it, Brandon. African American families with two-parent households, the same level of education, African American families are actually doing better economically.
Okay, but to add on to that, hold on, I have a statistic on here and I need to find it.
Yeah, sure.
63% of Black youth grow up in a single parent household, whereas only 31% of white youth grow up in a single parent
And
household.
whose fault is
That's
that?
irrelevant to my point, though.
What do you mean, whose fault is that?
Like,
Wait, that's irrelevant to my point. That's not what I never.
If you're
mentioned-
trying to say that the father runs away, then you're just using a Black stereotype that's not proven.
Hold up, that's not what I'm saying at all. It's you completely straw man.
No, that was the
No, I
conservative
wasn't
logic, not to
Talking
use
to
that.
you, I was talking to conservative logic.
I know, but your original point in bringing up the single motherhood rate was responding to my point. My whole point, talking about, I said back in when segregation was prominent in the U.S., like two-parent households of African Americans, we compare them to two-parent households of white Americans, and at the same education level, African Americans were doing way better economically, and on average. Like these, we talked about schools and education. Black private schools, when you compared them to white private schools, blacks were doing economically and educationally way better. Like grade tests on average were significantly higher.
Then like the whole education system as a whole, or are you comparing that to white private schools?
White private schools.
Are you sure? Because it sounds like it's education across the board.
yes,
No,
it's
Because
because
any
I
private
compared it from-
institution
no,
is going to have
no, I
higher
compared it from
test
black to
scores.
white. Private.
And this was done during the segregation era or today?
we'll talk about today.
I'm talking about back when segregation was prominent, so 1940s, that type of.
Oh, I know that's specific.
So you're saying that segregation was actually equal?
No, never said that. I just said African Americans back then, when you compared like the same education, two-parent households, all that, they're doing economically better. So I'm
And
saying,
do you think it was like fair to get into that private institution? Do you think like it was like easier, like it was like the same level for like a black person to get into a private black institution, the same as a white person to get into a private white institution?
no, because private schools differ. No private school that's the same on their basis of how people are accepted. So no, I would disagree on that.
And also, but can I get an answer from you? Do you think it was separate and equal segregation?
No, of course not.
Okay, so
I'm not
I
adv-
think
I'm not
so. To
advocating
go back to the point we
segregation.
were trying to make, which is why Black people are disproportionately impoverished. I think that what would it have been? It would have been like around 70 years ago. That cycle of like taking a community that originated in, for the most part, in slavery, and then like you're giving them rights, and then like recently equal rights, right? And so, but I still think that there is blatant discrimination against them that kept them poor, that kept them impoverished compared
Do
to white
you
people.
understand what started them being in poverty? It's the war on poverty under Lyndon B. Johnson, in which he dumped money into these poverty minority communities, and as they were going up in economic growth, they just went straight down after he started investing money into
It
them.
started before that. It was taking this group of it was like
When they were coming back
into
up,
like the
he
Jim
shot them
Crow
back
era.
down.
Hold
They
up.
were only going up because of Lyndon B. Johnson, and when he stopped, that's when it went down.
No, when
So
he
let
started,
me elaborate on that. So the poverty rate was actually declining before Lyndon B. Johnson for all minority groups and races, etc. So yeah, the poverty rate was actually already on the decline before Lyndon B. Johnson instituted the Great Society Act. But the Great Society Act placed minimum wage, which disproportionately affected black teens and unemployment rates with the black community. Also, he expanded welfare systems with de-incentivized two-parent homes, which increased crime rates, increased violent crime rates, and the decline in poverty slowed down as compared to before the Great Society Act, when it was already on the decrease at a much faster rate. And then when the Great Society Act was implemented, violent crime rates spiked in the African American community, black teen unemployment spiked, poverty was on the like declined slower than it was supposed to. I actually have a graph on this on the predictive
source for that?
and the non-predictive.
What's your source for that?
I got you.
Speaking of two-parent households,
Yeah, my source is the American Conservative and Nielsen.com.
Well,
So
you
your
just
source
use a
is a
conservative
conservative
biased source.
That's a
you're,
genetic,
okay, you're making a genetic fallacy.
That's a
You're
genetic
attacking the
logical
source. You're not
fallacy.
attacking the argument itself.
Yeah, that's a genetic logical fallacy. You can't tell me something is wrong because of its bias. You have to tell me why
I'm not
something's
saying the
wrong
source.
because
I'm
of
That's
not
not-
saying
yeah.
statistics.
I'm not saying
We're
it's
not
wrong.
saying
I'm
that
just
the-
Then what's the
saying
point?
that's a
What's the point in
trustworthy
pointing
source.
to it? What's the point
So
in saying it's
the
biased?
source you're using is inherently like, conservative is in the title, right?
Yes. How does that make it wrong?
I'm not saying it makes it wrong. I'm saying
Okay,
it makes
so
it
then
But what's
biased.
the point of bringing up that?
It being biased has nothing to do with the methodology conducted by the study.
It being biased makes it unreliable.
No, that's wrong. It's a genetic
That's
logical
so
fallacy. This is the twice time you used it. You're using a logical fallacy. I'm telling you.
That's like arguing that Wikipedia is a reliable source when it's
It is-
not.
Have you been
Have
through
you- wait,
Wikipedia? They cite
Wikipedia-
literally every single source they
Go
use
to
and every
Wikipedia
study they
right now
use.
and tell me one other website that lists literally every single source for every single point they make in their whole article. Wikipedia. Do you know what it takes to post a Wikipedia
Anyone
article?
can go in.
Was the source you have like that statistic? Was it conducted by them themselves, or is it something that they grabbed from like something else?
Conducted by them, but first, so it's not to so before we even get into how you just used a complete logical fallacy, the genetic logical fallacy, according to Media Bias Fact Checker, they have a factual rating of high. So I don't think their bias has anything to do.
We're
with
not
the
saying that we're not saying that like
Okay, so
the
then what's the
study
point in bringing
itself
up the
is
website?
wrong. That's not what we're saying.
Okay, so then what's the point in bringing up the website name if you agree
Okay.
with it, right?
No, the source is biased. That we have that in like placed. We know
Okay,
that.
good.
And they committed their own study, and we don't know what questions they asked or where they got their
But the
answers for
like
the
the
study.
sample size, anything.
Exactly. They could have asked 10
It's
people.
not,
They
it's
could
not
have
a,
asked
it's not a sample size.
1,000 people.
It's not a. It wasn't a survey. They
Well,
based
so-
it off of economic and poverty status, and I have
Yeah, like
no, I-
U.S.
that was
Census
just, yeah, that was just one of my sources. I have multiple sources on
But-
the Great Society Act. Let me pull up my doc. Yeah, the Heritage.
I want to go back. You said something. You mentioned two-parent households, and one of the most common ways to go from a two-parent to a one-parent household is if one of them gets arrested, which is a
Wrong.
big problem in the colored communities.
That's
No,
wrong.
welfare is what decentralizes
Yeah.
two-parent households. Welfare.
The expansion of
I know,
welfare.
I'm just saying. I'm going to like
Okay,
I'm
go ahead.
narrowing into a specific reason to like transition to the justice system. So I want to bring up the war on drugs, and I want to bring up I want to transition into like cops and like the biases associated with like targeting communities for crime.
Are
Not
y'all
the
gonna
laws
let Ryan back in?
Ari, what?
Are y'all gonna let Ryan back in? Cause
She messaged me on Instagram and she said that she couldn't join, and I said I don't know what to do. So I mean, I can send her the link again.
all right.
Yeah, I don't know why she left. Anyway, okay. So like now, like, because like we're talking about modern white privilege, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. So in 2009, New York City's Stop and Frisk program, which was done through the NYPD, 87% of those stopped were Blacks and Latinos. 10% were white. The New York City demographics, by the way, are 53% Black and Latino, and 44% white.
Yeah. So. Okay.
So 87% of those stopped were Blacks and Latinos. 10% were white,
Mhm.
and white people were actually found more likely to possess contraband than their Black and Latino counterparts.
Zach, do you want to
Yet-
take this one or should I?
And yet they
I
specifically
mean,
targeted Black and Latino.
Yeah. So
It's back.
the stop and frisk program you're talking about, that actually reduces crime a lot. Okay, blacks are more likely to commit crimes, and when you get thrown in the prison, you don't
That's
just get
actually not
thrown in
true.
the privilege. That's very true compared to whites.
No, you're only using the incarceration rate.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
I'm talking about the
No.
stop and frisk, which is
Correct. Okay,
So if
but
if
you don't get thrown in. You don't get thrown in the prison for having a little bit of weed on you. You understand that, right? The people that were getting thrown in the prison were the people who have large amounts of drugs with intent to distribute, which blacks are more likely to distribute outside of their households, and they are more likely to have guns and more likely to be violent towards cops. All those things add up. So if you're going to bring in the whole sentencing disparity
That's not true.
based off of this,
Wait, what's
That's
not
not
true?
true.
what's not true about that? What is not true about that?
African Americans do
When
not
you
use
look
drugs
at
more than
police
white
violence,
Americans.
That's not what he said.
That's not what I said. They distribute them more, and they're more likely to have more of the drug.
He said distribute.
No, they're not. There
Distribute
is
with intent to
no
distribute
not
outside of your
true.
house. Yes, that is.
He said,
I will get you 5
okay,
sources right now.
Yeah, hold up. They're more likely, according to the Washington Post, which is a left-leaning site, since y'all like bias, they are more likely to distribute outside of their households. That's what he said. He didn't say they're more likely to distribute. He didn't say they're more likely to use. He said more likely to distribute outside of their household.
That's not the stop and frisk program. The stop and frisk program has to do with drivers and cars.
Okay, you understand. You don't see the race of the person you're pulling over, right?
Yes,
You're like
you do.
behind their car. Are you kidding me? When you get pulled over,
Yeah.
cops don't look at the race. They're like, oh, I see he's black. I'm pulling him over. That's not how it works.
Yeah, that's what we're arguing.
No,
That is
what?
definitely a factor.
Okay, if you want to talk about New York crimes, blacks represent 95% of failure to comply charges, 90% of resisting arrest charges, and 98% of all illegal shootings. So, but yeah, like if you want to talk about the crimes in the New York area, it's a lot higher, significantly higher in African American.
I'm not talking about the crimes. I'm talking about like police targeting these communities, not necessarily that they do it more or less, but that they are like literally looking towards them for the crime.
I'm trying to understand your logic.
High crime
If a certain community is supposed to commit more crimes, you're going to put more police there. That's common sense.
It's reported crime rate, which is a direct result of like the convictions that you get, which is like correlated to the arrests that you make.
Okay, do you know what CompStat
Right.
hotspotting is?
Do I
Like,
what?
get that?
Do you know what CompStat or hotspotting is?
I'm assuming you mean like patrolling a certain area.
It's similar, yes. So these CompStat collects data from shootings, just basically areas with higher crime rates, which are disproportionately higher in African American communities, or predominantly African American communities and predominantly Hispanic communities. So they send a higher amount of cops to these areas because they have higher amount of crimes, and it significantly reduces crime rates. So if you're telling me you would rather have high crime rates and lower police, or high police and lower crime rates, but the
What I'm
trade-off
saying
is that
is
most people
that
get arrested.
crime rate, as you call it, is reported crime rate. It's not like it's looking at like because you can't know someone does a crime unless you actively arrest them and convict them for it, and then it goes and factors into the statistic. And so what I'm saying is that these cops think that communities of color, like the Hispanic and the Black community, use. I'm like talking about drug possession, like specifically, that they think that they use these more when in fact they are not. They don't use it more.
Yeah, I agree.
But that because they look at them more, then the statistic comes up that they use them more because you're looking there.
No, the statistic is the same that they use them at similar rates. Nobody here is arguing that they use them at higher rates. The reason for the higher incarceration rate of them is because of hotspotting, CompStat, and the fact that they're more likely to distribute or use with like a weapon on them and distribute outside of their house. So they're going to be they increases their chance. According to a study published by the Washington Post, it increases their chance significantly to get arrested for it or incarcerated.
That's not the stop and frisk program.
What
of New York City.
You just talked about drugs. You just talked about what?
I'm saying the stop and frisk program, which has nothing to do with where you sell. It has to do with what's in your car when you're driving.
You said
And
you're
it's
talking about the similar
87% of
drugs.
the people stopped were Black and Latino.
Then why'd you bring up the similar usage rates of drugs?
He didn't. I
Because
did.
you were trying to justify looking
No,
at
he
them,
didn't.
or conservative logic was by like their crime rate and that they like were doing it more.
No,
They are distributing
none
them
of
because
us
they
said
are
they're
more likely to
doing
have
it.
drugs in their car.
No, there is no racial. There is like Black people are not more likely to do it more. They're not more.
No,
likely
I
to
understand
sell
that.
more, to use
No,
it
what I'm
more.
saying-
I understand that is that they're more likely to have more of it. When you have more drugs,
Of
you're
what
going
drug?
of any
Yeah.
drug. They,
Yeah.
they
That's
are
not
more
true,
likely to
because white-
distribute outside
The
of their
white
house,
community.
aka
That's not true because the white
drugs
community
in their
makes up the
cars.
majority of meth dealers. So
Okay,
I don't.
meth,
That's one
sure.
drug. You can cherry pick a data and then call it like what?
Yeah, like that's not all drugs in general. Things like
Yeah, but
weed, things like. And
I have
again,
another statistic.
go ahead.
Blacks are only 14% of regular drug users, which fits the demographic, right?
Yeah. So
13%
the,
of people
what's
are
the
black.
source of that? What's
Yet
the
they
source?
are 37% of those arrested for drug charges and 56% of those in state prisons.
Yeah, yeah. Can I get
Okay,
the,
you go ahead, Jack. You can take this one.
Can I get the source? Because I've looked at that.
This is like it's on my phone, sorry, which is what I'm live streaming with. But
Yeah, I mean I've seen that.
it's like a whole like source full of other sources.
Yeah, so I've seen that statistic before. It was conducted using a survey, which it analyzed a control group and asked them if they've done illegal drugs before, and which I personally I'm not gonna accept that premise, because if I'm asked if I've done an illegal drug before, I'm more than likely gonna say no. So I don't think that survey is reliable. I'm not saying because it's biased. I'm saying because the methodology is flawed.
But I don't see how your race will affect whether or not you answer the survey.
What?
Like,
That's not what nobody said that. Well, nobody said your race affects how you.
Anyone, no one in general is saying, yeah, I use illegal drugs.
When did I bring up race? About what? I said in general.
So then the statistic, it's not giving me a number of black people saying that, or like white people saying, it's a statistic. And if you're saying that race is not going to make you more or less likely to answer correctly, then the statistic should still match.
No,
the actual user.
I'm saying, bro, what? I'm saying the statistic is flawed because the methodology conducted by the study is flawed. It uses a survey that asks people, all different races, ask them if they have used illegal drugs. I literally never, the word race out of that never came out of my mouth. I said most likely if you go to a random person and ask them if they use an illegal drug, even let's say they're 100% have, like they're caught on camera, but you ask them, have you used an illegal drug, and they don't know you, you're just a random person, they're probably going to say no because they don't want to get reported to the police or anything.
But that doesn't have like a racial factor in it, which I don't.
I'm not saying it does.
No one said it does.
I don't
No,
understand.
you're straw man.
how that
How do you not see the straw man in me?
statistic?
You're not attacking my argument. You're attacking a ghost refutation.
You're not attacking mine.
I am. I'm telling you the study is flawed. What are you talking? I'm telling you the study is flawed, and I just gave you the reason why.
The study isn't based on like numbers. It's based on statistics. So if you're saying, oh, well, yes, of course, someone's going to say, oh, no, I haven't done drugs. But there's not going to be an increased chance of someone doing that if they are black. So I don't see how that.
How do you think they got
that changes the statistics?
How do you think they got?
Because it's all statistics.
How do you think they got the statistic?
It didn't say where they did, but I was assuming
that
that it was like looking at conviction.
Yeah, no,
because the statistic isn't just people saying that it's drug users. They're saying 37% of those arrested for it. You can't say like you look at arrest records and 56% of those in state prisons for it.
Read the 14% first. You read something about 14% earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Read it again, please.
What?
Can you read the 14% statistic you read earlier?
It's all one thing. It says blacks are 14% of regular drug users, 37% of those arrested for it are black, and 56% of those in state prisons for drug crimes are black.
Yes. So the 14%, I was attacking that directly and saying that the study that got the 14%, the statistic, they got it from a survey. And that survey is flawed because the methodology is not truthful.
And the part where you're talking about the state prison, you don't get thrown in the state prison for just having drugs. They took all drug-related crimes and put that into it. If you take directly drugs, just drugs only with intent to distribute out of this black population from prison, they are 37.5% of the prison population. You take away only drugs, it drops down to 37%. So blacks have other charges that go with it, like failure to comply, having a weapon. Right, it's not just drugs.
Yeah, the main reason they're actually
failure, comply, and all that comes with arrest, and that comes with like when you go to arrest someone for a drug crime, because you can't arrest.
But they're not going to go to state prison unless you do these things, unless you have other things, or unless you
target them for the drug crimes, and then they have.
Bro, you're trying to.
Nobody targets. They don't target African American communities. The actual thing they target is high crime rates.
Dude, if you're talking about targeting, are you aware of police diversification? You know what that is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's basically.
Yeah, I'm assuming you mean like.
It's basically when police force takes all their blacks and minorities and they put them in the minority communities. So if you want to talk about targeting, then it's people targeting their own people. It's not white people targeting black people. It's literally going into minority community, which has more crime. Of course, more police are going to be there, and you're more likely to get caught if you live in an area with more crime.
Yeah, so let's fundamentally break this down. So basically, what we are saying is the reason they go into state prisons isn't because they have a small amount of drugs on them or weed or whatever you want to say. It's because that you usually just get a fine for that. You don't actually get thrown in state level prison. What usually happens is they will resist arrest, which is 95% of blacks, or failure to comply, which is also 95% of African Americans, and then that increases their chance of getting into actual prison or state prison or jail. That is our point, and you're saying that they target minority communities, and we've given you, give us a program that says they target minority communities. We've given you 2 programs, CompStat and Hotspotting, and there's another one. It's like this thing where they have a machine that detects where actual shootings are coming from. But Hotspotting and CompStat, which detects it collects data on higher crime rates in areas, and then this was not instituted before high crime rates were in the African American community. This was after they saw a spike in crime rates in the African American community. So they instituted hotspotting in areas with higher crime. It doesn't matter if they're black or white. Like if there's areas that are predominantly white that have high crime rates, and that's where hotspotting goes on. And that's where the majority of whites are arrested because it's a predominantly white area. The majority of these areas just happen to be predominantly black, and they have higher crime rates, which leads to higher arrest rates. But it's not because of racial bias or racism or white privilege. That is because they commit crime at a higher rate.
Reported crime. Because
reported crime.
No.
The cops are also going. Wait, the cops are also going to where bodies are, to where dead bodies, like actual dead bodies. There's no reporting. It's actual dead bodies. Blacks are 6 to 7 times more likely to die of violent crime than a white person or Hispanic person by a black person. So they're not just going to where reported crime is; they're also going to where dead bodies are.
Which is kind of unrelated to a drug search and like. Okay, so I think it's my turn to counter. I think that
I never said it was related to drug usage. I said it's relating to hotspotting. I brought up hotspotting, and you said I brought up hotspotting, and I just hit a blank. What the frick? That was weird. I was just thinking of something. I just hit a blank. Carry on. I'm sorry.
Okay, so I am saying like you were saying that you have 2. What's the word? Sources of
programs
of non-racial targeting, and so I was saying that like the war on drugs and looking at drug chart, I'm looking at again my own policy, I guess, law that they're enforcing, which is drugs, and drug usage and drug dealing is not a racial disparity. It occurs across the board. And I'm saying that minority groups, which is based on skin color, because that's the way you tell someone's a minority group, is based off their looks. And the NYC stop and frisk program, that is based off the look of the driver. And you randomly stop someone and you check their car, and if they have something, then of course.
Do you have a source that's saying it's based off of race and not based off of traffic violations or actual things that would get you pulled over? Legal thing.
Well, it didn't give a reason. All it said was that 87% of those stopped were black and Latino, while 10% were white.
Yeah, so you're looking at a disparity. You're not looking at racial bias. You just said it's because of race.
Yeah, you said they're targeting them.
Okay. Actually, I have a different one, which is it goes into to stop and frisk, but it's a different source. It's done by Harvard. It says results from stop and frisk and police public contact survey put together forms a pattern. Relative to whites, blacks, and Hispanics seem to have very different interactions with law enforcement, interactions consistent with some form of discrimination.
Okay, prove it.
That was done by Harvard.
Yeah, you can't say there's discrimination without giving me any actual, give me, how is there discrimination?
Racial discrimination is right there.
How? You can't just say there's racial discrimination done by Harvard.
Targeting them.
Because they're targeted, it's like the police looking at cars going by and going, I'll stop that one. Why do they choose that one?
No,
because of their race.
They stopping off of traffic violations and speeding, which blacks commit disproportionately higher than whites.
That's not what stop and frisk and police public context
Okay,
Yeah,
really
that
are.
has nothing to do with
explain
that.
stop and frisk to me.
Stop and frisk was put in place to basically choose a random person driving by. Like, I'm going to choose that person. And if it was that, then the amount of blacks and whites pulled over would be close to the same. I'm not saying the same, but it would be close to the same. They're not the same.
Or at
So-
least match the demographics.
It
of the
depends what area
community.
you're in. Again, if you're in a poverty
It
area,
was done across, and it was all over New York City.
all
Was
over,
it stop and
New York City is majority, or no, it's not majority black, but the areas in which the crime was happening are majority black. So of course the cops are going to go in areas
But
where crimes are
They
happening.
didn't look in that area. They looked all over in New York City.
NYC, yes, correct.
Okay, so stop and frisk is when the police temporarily detain somebody to pat down their outer clothing, and there are specific articulable facts leading a reasonable police officer to believe a person is armed and dangerous. So they have to have probable cause for this. So like if a traffic violation is a perfect point. If you're going 90 miles per hour in a 40 speed limit, they could have probable cause to search you to see if you're trying to get somewhere to do something bad or something like that. I mean, that's just one example. If you're a failure to comply, that's a perfect. If an officer is telling you to get out of your vehicle because you just committed a traffic violation, you ran a red light, and they're telling you to get out of your vehicle because you're not obeying you're not complying with them. Like if they ask you for your license and you don't give it, they're like, get out of your vehicle, and then they search you, pat you down before they detain you, and that would be an example of stop and frisk. The failure to comply would go into that. Resisting arrest would go into that. Traffic violation. These are all things that lead to this.
Yeah, and I'm saying that like your thing with like failure to comply and like all like resisting arrest, like those type of things. That like if your sample size, if like you're taking 90% of those people that were stopped and like 10% whites, and then you're converting that into like a resist arrest
What?
when
That's
that
not-
matches that
That's not a
90%.
statistic. You just no.
I have no idea.
Your presumption is completely flawed. That's not correct at all. They got to
You mentioned earlier that like
they
black
get
people
the
were more
statistics.
likely to resist arrest
Right,
and like
can I finish, bro?
more likely to
They get the
It was
statistic.
actually
less
totally
likely to comply.
first.
They get the statistic by getting all of the failure to comply charges and seeing which ones are African American and seeing which ones are white. They don't get I don't know what you were trying to get at earlier, but they get all of the charges in New York City, or sorry, New York, and they see which ones are African American and which ones are white, and 95% of them are African American.
Yeah, but I'm saying that like failure to comply, it's something that like happens after you stop them, right? It's after you like after you like look at them, right?
Oh, obviously, sure.
Yeah. So when you stop 90% of
But you can't
the
search them.
90% of the people you stop,
But you can't
or
search
black
them
people.
unless they do not comply.
Yeah, you can't. You're not allowed to say.
saying.
You can't search them without
but
probable
the rate
cause.
of people that are like not complying is going to like should match the rate at which you're stopping them. Like if you stop 90%
So what's the
of
rate?
people,
What's the rate at which they're stopping them?
87% of those stopped were black and Latino.
87.
10%
So okay,
were
so
white.
wait. What percent are Latino? Because then we have to separate the Latino and black.
It didn't separate them.
Yo, hold up. So I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt and say you said 87%.
Mm-hmm.
Let's pretend 0 of those were Latino and they're all black. And that there's still a difference between 87 and 95, and that's not including the fact that Hispanics probably or Latinos probably represent a big portion of that 87, or a decent portion at least. But since you don't have a statistic on, they didn't separate the statistic. We cannot know if it's definitely not blacks for the full 87 because you said blacks and Latino. So even if it was.
Hello?
Zach, I think your mic cut out.
Did that-
Yeah.
You want to finish, Brim?
Well, yeah. So he
Do you
was talking
know where
about
he
the
was getting at?
87. Yeah. So basically, he's saying that you're talking about the failure to comply, or you were talking about them being pulled over, right? Of course, if there's an 87 difference and 95% of those people are failing to comply compared to the whites, then of course more blacks are going to be stopped and frisked and found with drugs.
Yeah, but I'm saying that like when you like pull someone over, you're not looking at them, like you're not looking at the race and saying, oh, they're more likely gonna not comply, so I'm gonna pull them over. You're thinking, oh, they more likely have something on them.
It depends. what community you're talking about. It depends exactly. If you can give me an exact area of which is more white, which is more black, that matters in that sense.
But it wasn't done in only one community. It was done all across New York City.
Exactly. In New York City, if they're doing them in poverty-run communities, it's going to be majority black. I don't think they would do these things in like the middle of the white areas, you know, like the middle of the nicer areas, which are wider areas.
You don't think, but you don't have like a rate of like at which and where, like in Queens or in Manhattan, where this was done.
What are you talking? No, I'm saying you don't know exactly where they happen. That matters. So if your study does not say exactly where they happen, that has an effect on the overall.
You can't tell where someone is from when they're on the road.
I'm talking about if you are in poverty communities, you're more likely to pull over a black person than you are a white person. Correct. Am I wrong?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. So when you look at where these stop and frisks are more likely to happen, they're probably more likely to happen in poverty-run communities because that's where more crime comes from. Am I wrong?
No, because there's also for drugs at least for like because like you're looking for like possession. You're looking at like possession of alcohol, possession of drugs, a gun,
and
like
who is more likely to possess drugs outside of their house with an intent to distribute?
No one. That's not
black
there's
people.
No like
Black people. People of color are more likely to. Yes, we went over this. People of color, according to the Washington Post, are more likely to be selling drugs and distributing them outside of their own households.
That's not in their car, though. You don't do that in a car.
Dog. You think they walk around with drugs on them? They're like, yo, here. No, they store drugs in their car. That's what happened.
They do it outside their house. So they would store it in their house.
They do it. The black people, the people of color will do. You're struggling it. Dude, when you sell drugs, you don't walk around with them outside your house. You take drugs, you put them in your car, and you drive around places where you're going to distribute. And according to the Washington Post,
outside their house.
Exactly. Distribute outside. White people are more likely to have it inside of their house and have people come to them. Black people are more likely to put it in their cars or go out to other areas and sell it. That is the thing. When I say outside the house, I mean literally outside of the house. Like going to hotspots, going to these areas where these gangs meet up and selling it.
Do you have a source for that?
Yes, the Washington Post.
The Washington Post.
Yes, study done by the Washington Post.
Okay. Well, I just have a study right here that was conducted by National Longitudinal Survey, and it found that 45% of whites are more likely to sell drugs than blacks.
45% of whites are more likely to sell drugs.
Oh, sorry. Whites are 45% more likely than blacks to sell drugs.
Yeah. Put that in the chat so I can look at that. Zach Cody said, "Let me in."
I know, but he keeps leaving. There.
All right, my computer died, and then I tried to join my phone, but then I don't think y'all could hear me because I was talking.
Okay.
You good?
Yeah,
we can hear you, Zach.
All right, that's cool.
You might cut out for like one part, but.
All right. Oh, so where are we at? Sorry.
I lost my train of thought.
We were talking about.
Bryce, you were giving a study.
Oh yeah. Whites are 45% more likely to sell drugs than black people.
Okay, outside of their house or inside of their house, right?
It doesn't say. It just says that they're more likely.
Okay, according to the Washington Post, black people are more likely to sell it outside of their house.
Yeah, but black people have an increased chance of getting arrested because they sell it outside of their house, or they sell it with a stranger, or they sell it with a weapon, which increases the sentencing disparity and also increases the likelihood of getting arrested, according to the Washington Post, which is left-leaning. Why would they report something that isn't true?
Your audio's like I think you have like background noise or.
I could hear him.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting in my room.
I hear a lot of static.
Yeah, it's like going.
I'm just sitting in my room. I don't have any background.
I can hear him. Wait, I kind of hear static, but not really. I hear his voice clearly.
Hold up. Here, give me like 20 seconds.
Yeah, now it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I could hear him, but yeah, I did hear static.
Now it's faint. Okay.
So, Han, this is not a topic question, but when do we want to
Okay.
end
So
this debate?
basically, I want to clear up what we're arguing. So
Mhm.
you're saying that like, well, so I was saying that like, I believe like there's like a racial bias in like targeting these people for like possession of drugs, selling drugs, whatever. And you're saying it has to do with other factors, like where they're selling in
Mhm.
like the community.
Yes.
Is what you're saying?
Yes.
And so like I don't think we can catch each other like this because unless I have something that says like actually no, like black people sell in their homes, and like, or unless you have something like no, like you
Well,
you can't tell the
I
race of
already
it, you know what I
showed
mean?
you that black people are more likely to sell drugs outside of their house.
Right, but I'm saying that like you don't know that when you're looking at a driver. You don't look at
No.
them and say, oh, they're probably gonna sell drugs. Like, no,
No,
that's not
when
how
you
it
are
is.
in a
No.
poverty community, you are more likely to pull over a black person than a white person, and drugs tend to be in poverty communities in mass amounts.
Actually, I don't think so. I believe that drug usage does not have a poverty like a
Well, I mean, no,
disproportionate
because
poverty ratio.
cops are more likely to be in poverty areas, because in poverty areas, that's where majority of crimes come from. So of course
So
you're
you're
going
more likely to catch. So you're more likely to catch someone with drugs in a poverty. Like if you were to get someone convicted of selling drugs, they're more likely to be from a poverty-stricken area than from like Manhattan.
Yeah, sure. I mean, because you're more likely
they're
to
looking
encounter a
there.
cop. You're more, yeah. I mean, they're not looking there for drugs. You're more likely to encounter a cop there. So, which is a direct result. If you have drugs in the car, you know, a cop encounters you, thinks you are acting sketchy, you're doing something wrong. They are obviously going to. Oh, Zach says to Adam.
Only Bryce can do that.
Right, add Zach. But when you are more likely to encounter a cop in a
It doesn't say
poverty
he's in
area,
here.
he's typing in the chat. What was I saying? Yeah, in a poverty-stricken area, you are more likely to encounter a cop.
All right, hello. Is there any static now?
No.
Well, like
No.
the thing is also like they're like. How is he talking?
Is there
Yeah.
any background noise now?
No.
Okay, sorry. All right, continue.
It's good.
No, yeah, it's gone. Anyway, I'm sorry. I was gonna look at, because that's like an issue that like we didn't see, like where they did stop and frisk. Because of course if they do it like 90% of the time in Queens, of course you're gonna find more right.
Mm-hmm.
So I was gonna try and look for that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do y'all believe there's any black privilege when it comes to the criminal justice system or policing?
No.
So if we
well, it depends on the crime.
we'll just in
Because
general.
in general, I would say no.
All right. So if we could provide like examples
Okay.
or
Static
statistics.
happening again. I can't hear you. Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
It's like every time you talk, it just like sounds like someone's typing.
Now I hear you.
Okay, is that better?
That is
No.
better, I think.
For me, it's not.
I changed my. Huh.
I can hear you. Talk.
I changed my audio output level.
Oh,
I don't know.
It's good now. It's good now.
It's
Or,
better,
like,
yeah. The
Okay.
static's faint now.
Yeah, I changed it to high. Okay, so so if we can provide like examples of widespread statistical black privilege in the like policing or criminal justice system, would y'all concur with us?
Wow, and
Are
say
you
that
saying
again?
you have like proof?
Yeah. So perfect. So Brandon, do you have the doc pulled up on white privilege? Actually, I can get to it if you want. Well, off of my head, I believe there's actually explicit bias in favor of African Americans when it comes to shooting. So, like cops on average are 0.23 seconds. White cops on average are 0.23 seconds slower to shoot a black person than a white person. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, African Americans or actually white Americans are 20% more likely to be shot if they're shooting at the officer or are armed. It's not shot in general. Like it's just like if they're armed or shooting at the officer.
30. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, keep going. Keep it. You can go.
Blacks are 30.5% more likely to be shot with a non-lethal force like a taser compared to white people.
Yeah.
Well,
And
black, like when you look at like use of like police violence against like on like a racial scale, I believe black people are like actually more likely to be unarmed. So like yeah, I think that
And-
correlates to
shooting?
like a less use of force.
And when they are shot,
Or like any sort, like I guess
no,
like
they are
like,
more likely to be armed. Black people statistically are more likely to be armed.
I don't think that's true.
Provide a
When
source.
you look at like police
Brandon,
shootings,
source it.
All right. Let me get one of my studies.
Yeah, but
I believe it's the one from Harvard.
yeah. So why they pull that
oh,
up?
I think I know what you're talking about. It found like no racial disparity among like violent police interactions, but it found like how I quoted, it's found like racial like discrimination in the form of like non-violent.
No, it found racial bias. I mean, not sorry, it found a racial disparity, but it found no racial bias when it came to police shootings.
That's like that's violent interactions with the police. That's yeah.
No,
I
no,
was
not,
saying that
not
it didn't.
necessarily, but yeah, sure.
Well, police shooting, that's a violent interaction.
Yeah, but that doesn't encompass everything. Violent encompasses a lot of things.
Yeah, and I'm saying that like when you look at non-violent, like pulling someone over, it found like race, like when you like even when you that I'm quoting that Harvard study you're talking about, like when you look at like civil like reactions to police and like context, like when you account for context, it's still like you can't explain it with like without acknowledging a racial discrimination.
That's not the Harvard study. You're thinking of you think of the study conducted by the Harvard economist, not actually Harvard.
Yeah,
No,
the Harvard.
No,
study.
I'm looking at the study you're looking at. It's an empirical analysis of racial differences in the police use of force. It was conducted by a Harvard economist. But the study we're talking about is a different study.
No, I don't think it was. I think it was the wait. Let me.
I
was gonna look back.
How
at,
long was
because
I can give you the link. See, look in the chat. That one's an empirical analysis, and then this one's the one conducted by the Harvard economist, not like the Harvard school.
Yeah, this one's like
which
56
study's in the
pages
chat?
strictly about police shooting.
Which one's in the chat?
That is one that's 56 pages. It's about police shooting specifically.
So this is an off-topic question, but how long do we want this debate to last? Like an hour and 30 minutes?
It's up to you guys.
All right, let's just call it at an hour and 30 minutes because we're at an hour and 12 minutes right now.
So
What's the wait? So how much longer?
like
I'm not looking at the clock.
about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I want to touch back a little bit. I'm not trying to shut the goalpost. I just want to kind of retrace a little bit because y'all were talking about the increase in policing and everything. So would y'all propose like depolicing areas?
Do we what?
Sorry.
Would y'all propose like depolicing areas? Because I was talking about how the higher policing is like leading to like racial bias or discrimination or whatever. So would y'all propose like depolicing certain areas or areas in general?
I think that there should be equal policing in like all areas.
I don't agree.
Yeah.
Because I think that when a family's life in poverty, families are more likely to be killed than in a middle-class area. So I think there needs to be more policing in areas where other families are more at risk because the police job is to protect society.
So wait.
How
So
about we just put enough police instead of focusing on one main area?
okay. So then y'all would like y'all would like higher crime rate. Because if
No,
you,
I never said that. You're
no. I'm trying to get into
I
the
think
point.
higher crime rate that like correlates with like convictions and like who you're arresting, right?
Higher
like,
crime
if
rate
you-
correlate with depolicing. Have you heard of the
Well, because like if you're going to like put more cops in these more like proportionately like Black and Latino and like non-white areas, then of course your crime rate is going to show that they commit more crimes because that's where you're looking for them.
Yes, because they do commit more crimes. They've been committing higher crimes before back way before like hot spotting and CompStat was put in place. Before these programs were put in place to where they put higher amount of police officers in areas with higher crime rates, they were already committing higher crimes. They were committing crime at a higher. That's why these programs were put in place, because they were committing. It's not
I think this is like a bigger issue. Like, to me, like, I don't think the solution is targeting them more. I think the solution is getting them out of poverty. I think that's the
Okay, and why do you think they are currently in poverty? What is holding them back?
like
Because
okay,
Black
there's like
minorities are
because
disproportionately paid.
No, that is false, because they don't receive the same, they don't go through the same education level on average that most white people do, and they don't work the same job on average that white people do.
spending
The
half.
reason they don't get the same education level is because they mostly grow up in single parent households.
Why do you think they grow up in
also wait.
Why do you
I
grow
think
up
when you look at like why poor people necessarily stay poor, you look at like, for one, like the higher crime rate, and like if you send if you send someone to jail, it's not just them that's affected, it's their family. It's very hard to get a job after prison. And like if you take like a standard 4-person family, take one parent out, send them to jail, of course the other 3 are going to struggle.
Okay, so
And
tell me
so-
what percent of the African Americans are going to jail are actual dads, and then if it's a majority, then sure, I'll concede that it could have a statistical effect on the single parent household. But right now, I have proof that says it's the spending habits, and then the education levels, and then the we're not necessarily the education levels like Brandon mentioned.
That's I wanted to tie into education levels. So like this goes off of race. This is like different than race. It's like a socioeconomic thing. But like Black people and Latino people are disproportionately poor. They're not like more. They're not the majority of poor people. Like I believe like a little bit over 50% are white, but like 76.5% of people in America are white. And so like it's like compared to the demographics of the nation, they're just Black people and Latino people are disproportionately poor.
Yes.
And if you look at education, public funding for schools is not the same thing across the board. If you look at like public funding for like a demographically rich area, that school is going to have better teachers, it's going to have better education opportunities. It's things like sex ed, which will like because teen pregnancy is a big issue in poor communities.
Yeah, no, it's not because of their socioeconomic status. Everybody gets public school. It's because their dropout rates are significantly higher.
Yeah,
they
and
have to drop out to support their family.
No.
High school dropout rate.
An 18-year-old or 17-year-old dropped out of school because he now has a family. That means he had sex, which means that he made a terrible decision and started a family. There is a study done by the Brookings Institute that I'm going to read to you, and here it is. It's the other reason that these kids are still in poverty is because of the decisions that they make. Steps for getting out of poverty are graduating high school and working a full-time job, no matter, even if it is minimum wage, and not job hopping. And then in the long run, you are better with sticking with one full-time job and moving up the ranks, because that is how you get raised. And the next and most important step is to not get married and not have a family until you are at least 21 and financially stable. If you do all of these things, you are 98% guaranteed that you will rise out of poverty and make at least $55,000 a year.
Well, that's the thing. These poor people don't necessarily know that, because how you said, like waiting till 21 or like marriage to start a family.
Yeah. So
like, sex education is not a thing that is like evenly talked about across the board in like rich and like
they aren't educated the same way.
It's public school, my guy. They have the same curriculum.
So there's actually a study that was done that determined it's not the funding that these poverty communities are getting, it's the way that they are teaching. So they are not teaching these kids.
It's the way that they what?
It's the way that the teachers are teaching, right? It's the way the teachers are actually teaching is that they're not teaching them proper language. They're not teaching them how to not use slang. They're not teaching them family values like other schools do. So that is not increasing funding will not change that. You have to change teaching methods in different areas. There's no point of dumping more money into these minority communities where it's not getting us anywhere. Because we've been doing that since
Well,
the
the thing-
1950s,
well,
and
because-
we've gotten nowhere.
Well, because like when you like give a school funding, that determines like how much they can pay their teachers. And
No.
when you're a teacher, you're
No.
going to go to a
Dog.
school that's going
The
to pay
lesson
you.
plans
A
are
better
the
one.
same, dog. It's not like a matter of who gets paid more. It's the fact that the lesson plans that everyone teaches in public schools and according to a district, they are all the same. They need to be differed. It's not a matter of it's increasing funding would not want a teacher to teach more.
By-
If you force a teacher to teach
What do you mean by
You do
different?
realize areas
By different,
schools,
do you mean
schools
like
with higher average test rates get lower amounts of public funding because they don't need as much.
Yeah, public
So
funding is not the answer.
These poor areas are obviously more likely going to have lower average test scores. I can look that up in a second, but I'm like 99% sure that's true.
wait, did you say public schools have less test scores? What? Sorry.
What?
What did you say about test scores?
I said schools with higher average test scores are going to get lower amounts of funding. Schools with lower average test scores are going to get higher amounts of funding because the government sees that they actually need it, and like these kids need more money for more help. Right? So these poor areas on average have higher test scores, so they're getting higher amounts of public funding on average.
Because certain
Obviously, not
schools,
every specific school is going to get a high amount of public funding, but on average, they're getting higher amounts of public funding.
federal funding, minority communities get federal funding. Other communities do not. They get what is called like county funding, in which it's a county like taxpayer system that goes into the school district. So it's very different. When we add federal funding into these things, it's proven not to work. So there's no point of continuing to dump in money federally, which comes out of our taxpayers.
Yeah. And so back
Well,
to
like you talked about like curriculum, like and like differing it, but like
Mhm.
things like sex education and like telling these students like do not have sex until you are married, or like do not have sex, like know how to use a condom. These things aren't part of curriculums, and
Yeah.
like they're like individual things that and like schools teach their
So-
children through like
So
it's
yes,
like an unrelated sex education thing.
I agree with you, but you think we should be adding more funding into these areas for the teachers to be required to teach that?
when
If
they're
you
already
can-
getting more funding.
They're already getting
Right,
more
well,
funding
because-
than every other place. Why is it that they are not as successful? Is it the
Because
way
they're
that
getting
teachers are
because
teaching?
the better teachers are going to, because like when you're like a what's the word, like a high praise like big school like that, like has like high test scores and everything, you want the best teachers, of course, right? And so
You're gonna take
and so like a survey was done and it said like teachers in like schools that were like typically like impoverished areas had like worse ratings than like and like were less effective than teachers who were in these richer schools.
But that's a choice. That's a teacher. How are you gonna? What are you proposing? Like, you force these good teachers to go work at bad schools? Like that's a choice. That's their decision. If they want to go work, if these,
No, I'm saying that like their decision is influenced by the school's ability to pay them.
yes, and the
Which
schools
is
are
like if your school is like a high prize school, you're
high
gonna have
testing
like
score, you get lower
teachers.
amounts of funding. We already went over this. If you're a high testing score at school and you get lower amounts of funding compared to lower testing scores, you get higher amounts of funding.
Yeah, the government doesn't see that you need it.
Yes, they look at an 89 overall testing score and they say, okay, that's pretty good. And they look at a 72 and they say, oh, that's bad. They might need some extra assistance. That's how it works on a simplistic level.
Well, it also has to do with like this, like the teacher like thinking about like, because like I'm sure like y'all have heard this, like as like a substitute teacher going in and saying like y'all act so much better than that school over there. Like,
Oh yeah, my substitute
Like you-
teacher did that. Yeah.
well, like you hear that like with like teachers comparing like the classes that they have to like across schools and saying, oh, this school acts way better than this school. So why would they choose the school that acts worse versus the probably richer school that's gonna like their kids are gonna
Dog,
act
I
better?
don't think you understand. Teachers, you can't just get a job anywhere. You're not going to move to another school across country and be like, oh, I want to work at this school.
First, you're being unrealistic, and also these schools. Are you suggesting that these schools are like worse? Because I know
No.
I know this is okay. Then what's the point in being up if they're worse or not?
I'm saying that the teachers like want to work at quote unquote richer and better schools.
They're not richer though.
Better teachers want like, and like when you're a better teacher, you have like the experience and like that like that these high prize institutions want.
Okay, so then how does so yeah, exactly. This is their decision. All goes back to like how are we gonna what are you even talking about? This is their personal decision on where they want to go teach.
You want to like force those teachers to stay in communities that they made it out of?
I just found something by the U.S. News and World Report that says in most states, poorest school districts get less funding, not more.
Oh, hold on, I'm gonna get my source.
It's from the U.S. News and World Report. It says school districts with
Wait,
the highest rates of
oh.
poverty receive less funding per student.
Or
than
are you
those
talking
with
about southern states?
It just says.
Look
it
at the
says most
state.
states.
Look at the states that it is. If you can find it, because I read a study about southern
it says
states
more than half
teaching.
of the states. It says in more than half of the states in the U.S., the poorest school districts do not receive funding to address their students' increased needs. It says school districts with the highest rates of poverty
so
receive
two other-
$1,000
Oh,
less per student.
No, yeah, this goes back to is that county funding or federal funding? Because again, county funding is something a school doesn't necessarily need federal funding. Because if the community around it is
It's in state
prosperous,
and local funding.
in state and local funding, exactly. So federal funding comes from the government, if you know that. So in state and local funding is going to be I fund the local public school to me, right?
Yeah, local.
In a minority community where there's a school, the people around them are funding that. And then what happens, the government goes, oh, you know, they don't have enough money. They go, oh, let's dump money into the school because that looks like a good idea.
So two studies
But the
looking
majority of
two studies looking
But
at
I'm saying, like, does the majority of like a school's ability to pay their teachers come from their state and local funding, or does it come from the federal money that they get?
Oh, majority in most school districts, I believe it is county or local. But
Exactly.
in poor
That's
districts,
local.
it's going
So
to
the schools are getting
let him finish, bro.
overall less money,
Let him finish.
even though they need it.
Go ahead, Brendan.
Okay, no, what I was saying is, of course, locally they're going to be receiving less money, right? Because the people around them are a lot more poor. But what I'm saying is that what happens is the government dumps money into those schools. It doesn't come from local funding because certain schools don't need it. They already meet their funds. The government will dump money into schools that actually don't meet those funds.
Right, but I'm saying the majority of a public schools, because like private schools are also something completely different. But public schools, like the funding that they get comes majority from the people around them.
Correct. But in minority communities, most of the money comes.
And I don't think the federal money. I don't think the federal money going more towards schools like in an impoverished area is enough to counterbalance.
Is enough. Again,
it's more than the local.
We put more money into public schools. Those public schools, we've been thinking this for what 70 years now. You know, we put more money into these minority communities, and all of a sudden things will get better. That has not happened at all. Funding to minority communities does not pay off. There's no point of adding funds.
I'm looking at a study right now, and it's saying that funding. Our whole point of this was to say that funding doesn't affect education, and this just validates my point. Even according to talkbeat.org, there's two studies looking over 10 states and the increased amounts. Okay, I looked at the increased amount of funding for funding schools, and it said that when the higher amount of funding was in place, the test scores or the average education, the average IQ of students was raised at all over a 10-year period, or a certain year period. And so
Wait, what did you say about IQ?
Like the average IQ of the students did not raise, and test scores did not raise.
Well, IQ is something that is different. IQ, you can't like change it once you get to high school. IQ is you're like born with your IQ, and you can change it up to like 5 years old, and then that stops. That's basically almost your like. And also, IQ is not a direct factor. Like it's not like directly correlated with intelligence. You can't say, oh, someone with 200 IQ is like across the board smarter than someone.
Yeah, it also doesn't measure test scores. Average test scores stay the same. If not, they decrease or increase by like a minimal effect. There's no actually a significant effect on public school funding. There's no correlation with increased public school funding and increased average test scores. So
Yeah, and
students
you're
are
wrong. You can change your IQ over time.
I think that's something you have to do outside of school. That's like an individual thing, like diet. That's like reading. That's things that like happen outside of school.
I mean, not necessarily. If you're getting a better education, I would assume you have a higher IQ than somebody who's getting a lower education.
Well, also
Somebody in
it's
Venezuela.
about caring about your education.
Exactly. That's our point. There's the whole culture in the African American community. It encourages single parent households. It encourages people to drop out. That's why the African American dropout rate is significantly higher. It's not because they have families, it's because of the culture. If they don't have families to feed at 16 years old, the majority of African Americans of teenage African Americans aren't freaking fathers. So I know you said that earlier. You said you have families to feed. Like, no, the average high schooler doesn't have a family to feed.
Yeah, but I'm saying it's like they're dropping out, like not because it's like a societal kind of thing. It's like an economic need to work to
You
support
can
a
work
family.
and you can work and you can get an education.
I work.
It's not,
Yeah, but it makes it harder, and you can't work full time.
okay.
Dog. Like, you don't need to work
Okay.
full time.
All right.
Okay.
Do we want to call the debate here?
So yeah, I mean, can we give a few minutes? We can just leave closing statement. So
All right, cool.
I want to talk about our main reasons for poverty are the Great Society Act passed by LBJ, which incentivized two-parent households, which spiked crime rates and spiked poverty, which is a statistical effect we see today. It wasn't a racist policy though. It was a policy that was implemented to help Black people, but in the end, it didn't help Black people. It was just a unforeseen factor, and also the minimum wage, which increased Black teen unemployment rates, and then for today specifically, we have Black spending habits, which they spend a lot on unnecessary things such as they spend $3 billion on tobacco, $3 billion on $3 million, $4 billion on alcoholic beverages, $3 billion on. Hold up, I'm not looking at my stuff right now. Okay, yeah, $3 billion on tobacco, and then give me a second. Okay. So yeah, in the 2013 survey, Prudential Research reported that 40% of African Americans consider themselves to be spenders, 51% consider themselves to be savers, and only 9% actually invest their money. On average, Blacks are 6 times more likely than whites to buy a Mercedes, despite having 1/3 of their of white income. 55% of African Americans are unbanked or underbanked, meaning they do not have a bank account. Only a quarter, about 2% of Black people, of Black households, only have no assets except a vehicle, compared to just 6% of white households. So these are all just economic disadvantages because they aren't spending wisely. They're not using their money wisely. And then you have the dropout rate, which is a correlation to. It's significant. It's so much higher when you go to the actual. So the American Indian or Alaskan Native is over 6%, and African American is 4%, and white is right under 2%. So it's significantly higher when you're looking at dropout rates. And then I have multiple graphs showing the spike in violent crime and poverty after the Great Society Act. And then just to wrap things up about depolicing, when you depolice, you see a spike in violent crime. If you haven't heard of the Ferguson effect, basically the Ferguson effect was when Aaron Garner died, and then police started they basically stopped noticing crime because they didn't want to get called racist and stuff. And I like to call it the victimization effect. Because a 2016 study by sociologist Matthew Desmond and Andrew Papatrinos concluded that Black people were afraid to call 911 after a heavily publicized violent beating of an unarmed Black man by white police officers. After the police beat Frank Jude, October 2004, was reported in the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. There's a 17% drop in 911 calls and a 32% increase in homicides. Basically, when you stop calling, when you depolice, you have an increase in violent crime and crime in general. June 2016, University of Missouri studied Rosenfield, published by National Institute of Justice, found that there is an unprecedented 64.8 increase in homicides in 56 large areas over the course of 2015, which was the start of the Ferguson effect. Basically, when you depolice, you get higher crime rates, and then that's going to have a circular effect on poverty. So y'all can go ahead and make the closing statement. Oh, Brandon, do you want to add something?
Oh yeah, I think just the idea of white privilege is a way to fearmonger people. I think the idea that the word white is in front of it is terrible, and people will say you cannot talk about it because you're white, and it's a way to invalidate people's claims because of it. And overall, I think the amount of police shootings, I think the media has a big role in trying to pretend that police shootings are directed right at Black people, where a lot of them are justified. And yeah, I think that's about it. And the media only covers when Black people are shot.
I mean, not all the time, but mainly, yeah.
Yeah, mainly. Yeah.
So,
Can y'all hear me fine?
yeah.
Oh, okay. My audio is gone out. Here, where do you think? Okay, I'll just go. Okay, so I think
He's lagging out for me. Anybody else hear him?
Yeah, you're lagging out.
Bryce, can you hear him?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry. Like I said, it's getting really noisy over here. Sorry. I was just muted.
Can y'all hear me fine?
Kinda.
I can't hear you.
Yeah, it's too laggy.
Okay, Bryce, we got all leave and come back.
All right. Well, I think we can call the debate here. It's been good. Thank you guys for doing this with us.
Yeah, man. Good conversation, bro.
Of course.
And yeah, we'll talk to you guys later.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.